Hello friends. So in this lecture we are going to see how to do basic network level configuration, like how we can assign the IP addresses to our host Linux boxes, how we can define the net mask, the gateways, the DNS servers to browse the internet. And we will also see that what is the difference if we are logged into the box on a GUI based session as compared to the session which is text based or non-GUI. And also we will see configuration differences, somewhat there is difference between the configuration files as far as Debian based distribution are concerned versus the Red Hat based distributions. We are gonna see the commands which are if config for interface configuration, if up or if down. We will also see that how we can set the host name of the system, and how we can use route command. So some of the stuff that I've written over here, as we do the configuration, maybe we'll have to use other commands that we'll see in there. So these are the basic ones. You need to understand about the functionality of these commands and how we can use that on our Linux box. So now let's head over to the terminal. I'm first going to go to the Debian distribution, and specifically the distribution that I'm going to use is Ubuntu. So let's bring up the GUI interface of Ubuntu and let's see how we can configure our IP addresses and bring up the basic networking in there. So here I'm in the Ubuntu box at the moment, and I have logged into it. And once I log in, or maybe you log in, you will find this double arrow in your Ubuntu box as well. Mine is connected at the moment. Your may not be, but worry not. Once you left click on that, you get this drop down menu, and then you go into the edit connections. This is doing the configuration using GUI, just for your information. And over here you might have a wireless connection if you have got a laptop or maybe desktop which has got wireless card connected to it, or if you have got an Ethernet card which is wired connection. So once you select that card, this one is wired, and you click on edit, and from here you can go into IPv4 settings. You can select either that it should get the IP address through DHCP server or maybe manual. I have put it on manual, and I have given it the IP address of class C, the net mask and the gateway, and also the DNS IP addresses. So I do a cancel. Now once I boot up this machine, each and every time these IP addresses, they are assigned using the GUI based tool which is known as Network Manager. Now I have opened up the terminal over here, and if I show you that if I type in sudo service, then network-manager, and then the status of the service, I give in the password, then it says that the service is running. Now this is the service which is responsible for managing GUI based network connections. If I make it stop, our network will be down. So at the moment, if I try to ping, let's say yahoo.com, I should be able to access it, which I do. Now the configuration file for this network manager, it's in etc. So if I type in cat etc/network manager, and afterwards networkmanager.conf, if I do a cat of that file, then we see that it's a very basic configuration which is in there. It just tells us that if down or DNS masquerade, or if up down managed or false. But if we do the actual, if we want to have a look at the actual configuration of the connection that is connected over here, we need to go into a particular directory which is, I believe, system connections. And over here, if I do a double tap, the number of connections that are available, since there is only one connection at the moment, which is wired connection. If we come over here, we see that wired connection 1. So this is the name of that connection, and if I press 1, which is the number of that connection, and do a cat of that. Alright, I need to execute this command with sudo. So I do that, and I see that the configuration settings that I had defined in GUI are indeed have been made available into this configuration file. This one is the gateway, this is the subnet mask or the net mask, and this is the IP address. These are the DNS entries that I had put in there. Now just to check the IP address on the fly, the command that we can use is ifconfig, and the interface number if we want to give, or if I just press enter, it will show us the IP address related information of all the interfaces that are active at the moment. So I press enter, and we see that we have got loopback interface, which is the always up interface to check that whether TCP IP protocol suite is working or not. So if your loopback interface is up and you can ping this interface, this IP address, this 127.0.0.1, that means that your protocol stack for TCP IP is working. The actual physical interface is Ethernet 0, this one, and its link type is Ethernet, and we can indeed see that it has got the IP address that we have set over there. And we can also see the broadcast address where all the host bits have been set to 1. We can see the net mask, and we can see the status of the interface as up. Also we can see the received packets, the out packets, maybe if there are some errors. All this information is available over here. Now let's try to change the IP address using ifconfig command. So we can do that by typing in sudo. We need root privileges for changing of the IP address using ifconfig command. And after ifconfig, I need to type in the interface that we want to change the IP address for, and then the actual IP address that we need to assign. So I type in 192.168.1.maybe21, and then the keyword is net mask. We also need to define the net mask. So let's define the net mask as 255.255.255.0. So at the moment the IP address is 1.20. I am changing it to 1.21. Let's press enter and have a look at the IP address information one more time, and we see that indeed it has been changed to 21. Now this configuration, it is only valid till the time this machine is running. Once it gets booted up, this information will be reverted back to the configuration that we have seen in the configuration file. So if we have got GUI, we can change that into that particular file as well, or maybe we can go over here and change the configuration from this edit connections menu. But if we do not have the GUI, then how we can change the configuration? Well, let's first stop this network manager service. To do that, I type in sudo, then service, and afterwards the network manager, and then stop. So as soon as I did that, you see this these double arrows over here, they are gone. And if I do ifconfig, we still have the link address over here. But if I type in, let's say, ping yahoo.com, we see that since it cannot resolve the yahoo.com IPv4 address, so it cannot send it traffic out. Likewise, if I try to send the packets using ping and use the IP address, let's see if we are able to do that or not. We see that network is unreachable because the route now, the default route which was defined in that file over there, that since that connection is off now, so that default route is also gone. How to see the routes? We type in simple command route, and after that I prefer to use -n, because if we do not do that, then it tries to resolve the IP addresses and usually takes some time. So if we type in -n switch or -n flag, then it simply type in the IPv4 addresses and it's much faster. So I press enter, and now we see that we have got an entry which says that if destination is this, then your interface is Ethernet 0. What is signified? It simply says that if any host whose IP address is falling between 192.168.1.0 starting from 0 till 255, then you can send the traffic out on the Ethernet 0. But if there is any other IP address any other IP address beside this range that I just told you, then the traffic will be dropped, just like in this case, that it gives the message that network is unreachable. Now I can define a static route on the fly using this route command by typing in sudo route add default gateway and the gateway IP address, which I know that 192.168.1.1 is the gateway IP address. So I press enter, and afterwards, if we have a look at the routing table or routing information of this Linux of this Ubuntu box, we see that an entry has been added, and now this machine knows that for any traffic besides this one, it needs to send the traffic out onto this gateway address. So now let's try to ping that IP address again, 8.8.4.4, and we see that now the traffic is getting out. But just like that if configuration that we just did on the fly, this route configuration or this route that we have just added, it will also be gone once the machine gets booted up. So how to make them permanent? Well, I just said that if you are using GUI, you do not need to do anything, just go over there in that menu and change the settings. But since that is off and we are presuming that we are in non-GUI environment, so what we need to do is that we need to go into VI and then etc and then network, and after that interfaces. This is the file that you will find in non-GUI based Linux distributions as well. So I press enter and we see that there are only 2 entries at the moment which belong to the loopback interface. This auto LO means that once your system gets booted up, then this interface should be brought up automatically. This auto means that. And iFace, this is for interface, and this is again interface name. This is inet is for IPv4, and this is the name of that, which is loopback 0 or simply loopback. Now if I want to make changes into this configuration file, like put in the entries for Ethernet 0, I need to do that using, let me just get out of here. We need to do that using root privileges. So I type in sudo and then vi, and then I come over here, I press O to go to insert mode starting from next line, and I type in the interface which was Ethernet 0, then inet, and I can either type in DHCP if I want it to be configured using DHCP, or I can type in static if I want to assign IP addresses myself. So I type in static, and in the next line I can press tab so that it is better for our visibility purposes, and after that I need to assign the IP address, the net mask, and the gateway. So I type in, let me just put a tab, address, and the address that we want to assign, let's say, is 192.168.1. Let's say 25, and then I need to put in the net mask, which is 255.255.255.0, and then the gateway, which is 192.168.1.1, and we can also define DNS servers over here by typing in DNS dash name servers. I'm just checking the spelling that they are all right, and let's just give it the DNS name server as 8.8.4.4. Now that's all there is to it as far as static configuration is concerned for Ethernet 0 IP address. Now let's just save this file, get out of it, and now to put it into force, the command is sudo if up. I'm gonna use the force switch because I'm in the GUI environment at the moment. Sometimes if you do not use the force switch, the configuration does not take effect. And also at the moment, this interface is already up, because if I do the command which is if config, we see that this interface is already up. So we can bring it down. If I type in sudo if down minus force it and then Ethernet 0, And now if I press or I type in if config, we see that Ethernet 0 interface is indeed no more there. Now to bring it back up, I can type in if up and force and Ethernet 0. Now once I do that, it takes a bit of a while because it is trying to configure it, and it has brought it up. And now if I type in if config, we should not only be seeing the interface Ethernet 0 in up position, but also the new IP address that we have assigned it in the configuration, which was 1.25. So I type in if config, and indeed we see the new IP address over here. Let's also see that if our network is working or not by typing in ping, and let's try to ping 4.2.2.3 IP address, which is a public IP address. So we can access that. And also let's try to ping yahoo.com so that we know that our resolving is also working. So that is also working. So all is good as far as configuration Ubuntu is concerned. Now I can disable that network manager service by downloading a package which is checkconfig. You can use that, and by what checkconfig does is that it gives us the option to enable or disable services at the startup of the machine. So since we have done the configuration in the configuration files of etc, then network and then interfaces, our configuration will work even if network manager is not installed. But primarily it is recommended that for GUI based environments we should use network manager, but for non-GUI based environment we should use that file that I just told you. Now we have seen the ping command to check the connectivity to a host. We can also use a command which is trace route to see the number of hosts or number of hops that are coming into the way to reach to that particular destination. Now if I type in trace route, we see that it is going to trace route 6, and the reason is that because by default trace route package is not installed on Ubuntu. I am using Ubuntu 12.04, which is precise pangolin, and I believe that it's the same for 14.04 as well. So we can install it, no problem. We can simply type in sudo apt-get install and then traceroute for Debian based distribution, and traceroute package will be installed. Now I have got another machine which has got traceroute installed. So just to show you the functionality that how we can interpret the output of traceroute command, I can type in, let's say, traceroute -n, and let's take the traceroute of 4.2.2.3. So what I wanted to show you is that it is based on ICMP protocol. It accesses or uses the ICMP request to send to this particular host, which is the first one, and it gives us the time, that how much time it took. This is my gateway, and then it changes the TTL value of the IP packet and then send the next packet and puts out the reply that how much time it took. So basically it gives us kind of tabular form, a graphical form, that how many hops were encountered, how many devices were encountered to reach to our final destination, and what was the time delay that was encountered to reach to each and every hop. So it's like if you are unable to reach to a particular destination and the traffic starts to drop, let's say maybe from 6th hop onward, then you would immediately come to know that up till hop number 5th your connectivity is good, but after hop number 6 and onward maybe there is some problem in the connectivity. So if you are responsible only, let's say, for hop number 3, maybe this also belongs to your organization, then you know that at least your end is clear, and you need to consult the guys who are responsible for other hops. Now what happens sometimes that network administrators, they put filters into place that blocks the ICMP traffic. So even if your end device or the device that you want to communicate with is in up and running position, you cannot really check the connectivity of that, or maybe the status of its whether up or down based on the ICMP protocol, because that traffic might be blocked due to firewall or due to configuration on the network devices. So there is another way to check that, and that is to use the network concatenation command. Now if I do a manual entry of let's say NC, and let's just go through with it quickly, that NC utility, it is used for just about anything under the sun involving TCP or UDP, and this is the key point, that it can open TCP connection, send UDP packets, both IPv4 and IPv6. So what basically it does is that it can open up a arbitrary port on your Linux or maybe even on your Windows box. This utility is also available for Windows environment as well, and it will start listening on that. So if we open up a TCP port, maybe ICP traffic is blocking, we can open up a TCP port, and we then try to connect to that TCP port from the host machine or the remote machine. So let's try to do that. Let's see how does it work. If I type in, let's say, sudo nc and then -l is the switch, and then the port number that we want it to listen to, let's just type in 12345. Now once I do that, this Linux host is listening onto this port. Now if I come on to, let's say, another machine, let's just put them side by side. This one is another machine, and okay, so this one is not, I'm in the same machine or what? Let me just see which terminal is that. Okay, so now I'm in a different machine. So this is the virtualized box and this is the other one. So the way to check the connectivity is, let's say we can pass on the string onto this box on this TCP IP port. So I bring up this other machine terminal and I type in NC, or maybe let's try to do this. Let's try to pass a string. Let's say this is SOS message, and let's just pipe it through to the NC command, and then the IP address of the machine, which is 192.168.1.25 that we just configured, and then the port, which is 12345. Now once I press enter, you see that immediately I pressed enter, this message got appeared using arbitrary TCP port number 12345 over here. This is SOS message. So based on that, we see that our network connectivity is working between the two end devices. Now besides that, there is also one command that we can use, which is TCP dump, which actually de-encapsulate or shows us the contents of the packet itself. So I type in TCP dump and then I use -i switch, which is for interface, and then the interface number. Now once we do that, if any traffic is going on between this host and the other one, those packets will be printed onto the screen. So if I try to ping, let's say 192.168.1.25 and then break the sequence, we see that indeed it says that this is the machine, which is os.local is the name, and the destination was this virtualized machine, and we see that it sent ICMP echo request or ping packet, and then the reply was sent, and so on and so forth. You can also install Wireshark software on your Ubuntu or Debian based systems and also on CentOS systems, which is a very good software tool to capture the packets for analysis and diagnostic purposes. Now in the end, let's quickly try to configure or change the host name of this machine. So there are two places to do that. In fact, there is only one place, which is the file etc host name, but for network connectivity testing purposes, we need to change it on two places. So you see, if I try to ping this name, which is vUbuntu, so if I put in vUbuntu over here, you see that I can ping that. Now if we make change only in one file, then this will not work. So we really need to do it on two files, and that's the practice of the industry as well. So the first place is sudo vi/etc/hostname. I press enter, and this is the host name that you can change over here, whatever you want to change it to. The second place where we need to change it is in the file etc hosts, and over here you can change this vUbuntu entry to the same entry that you would put in the hostname files. But remember that sometimes what happens is that once you change the host name, to make it effective, you need to reboot the machine. So that's all there is to it as far as IP related information and network configuration and troubleshooting is concerned on Debian based distribution. And in the next video, we will see that how we can do this configuration on Red Hat based distribution, specifically CentOS. So stick around and I'll see you in there.